I'm going to talk about my Nextcloud backup system, my backup script that's both a local and remote backup. But before I do that, I want to talk about the importance of backups and having a backup plan. And so not having a backup plan could be like getting up on a chair and because you need to reach up to accomplish a task. So you stand on a chair and you don't think ahead of time. Maybe the chair is faulty, or maybe it could break, or maybe it's a foldable chair. And you only realize this when your arms are up in the air and you come falling down. And perhaps because you did not have a backup plan, you slam your mouth into something on the way down. And then you need to go to the ER and get 18 stitches to fix it. So always have a backup plan and a backup of your data. And it's good to have a backup plan in general in life, or else things can go wrong if you don't anticipate what could happen. All right, so starting out, I'll talk about my hardware setup. And so I've got my Nextcloud here locally at my home, and I have I've got 256 gigabyte SSD with the operating system, and then my data directory is a 4 terabyte drive, and then I have a local 4 terabyte backup drive, and then for the backup, I have got a Raspberry Pi at a family member's house a few miles away from here, and I've got a big hard drive attached to that. So, and that's a backup drive, of course. So that's my setup, and this uses rsync, but I was chatting with a friend, and he was telling me about some of what he uses with ZFS. Another one that's good with that sort of thing is ButterFS, so that might be a better option for you. It's just do your research and find out what works best for you. And another thing I want to talk about is the security of the remote. I'll go ahead and get that out of the way. The security of the remote drive. And so the way this works, this backup script works, let me get the right file here, is this, using rsync to connect. And if the SSH key, if you create it and do a password, that's going to require manual intervention. And so, when I created the SSH key, I just hit enter when it prompts for a password. Now, you may be concerned about security with that. Well, I've got it at, root login is disabled. I've got it at an alternative port. That's not the port, by the way. 23456 is not the port. I've got an alternative username. It's obviously not root. I've got an alternative port. And so if you figure out if you get the username, the port, and you figure out what IP address it's at, and all those things, and then you get my SSH key, and you're like, all right, I'm set. I have actually got, on the remote drive, I have a firewall setting where it only allows incoming connections from my home network. So then if you get all those things, including my SSH key, you'd have to be connecting from my home network. And then you have to be like, wow, that's some great effort to go to hack into my stuff. And so, it was interesting. On the Raspberry Pi, I was unable to get UFW to stay enabled after reboot. Other people had that issue. So I went with IP tables for the firewall, and maybe I should have gone with NF tables, but maybe I'll do that next time. All right, so let's look at the database, the backup script, and another thing. So if my home IP address changes, I'm talking about the backup drive, if my home IP address ever changes, and it never really does. I talked with the guys, the AT&T guys, and they said, well, if we have some hardware changes, then your IP address might change. But if it ever does, I'll just go over there and I'll take out the micro SD card and I'll update the configuration file for IP tables. And another thing, the remote drive, I have Lux encryption for that. So if anyone came in and snatched up that drive, it's encrypted. That's important. Little peace of mind. All right. So here is my crontab. Here are my crontab settings. And I run an hourly backup for both local and remote. And then the database runs daily at 3:15 a.m. And so I've got these other flags here for running delete, which is a file sync. What it does is if files have been removed on the source drive, it'll go ahead and remove those files on the target drive. So if I go through and delete a bunch of stuff, I don't have all the extra files. So that's run on the local backup drive on the 14th and 28th. So basically once every 2 weeks. And then on the remote drive, I run the delete, the sync option. You could call it the sync option, syncing the two drives. I run that on the 7th and the 21st. So that's once every 2 weeks. And so we have a syncing that happens either local or remote once a week. Because I don't want to have to do a restore. And it's like, well, I did do a big task the other day and I cleared out all these files. Now I have to clear them out again. All right. And here's my backup. I just back it up to the op directory. You pick the directory of your choice. And then it has a timestamp. And then, so they don't just keep piling up the backups, I delete everything that's older than 30 days. And we get to this point in my script. And by the way, the backup, this is the script itself. That's probably was obvious. All right, if rsync, so here we're getting down to the second part where we use rsync. And if that's running, we're just going to exit it. We're not going to worry about it. It'd probably be fine. I don't know what would happen if rsync's running and then tries to do the same backup again with rsync. I haven't actually tested that, but probably not that bad, but whatever. We'll just exit it there. All right, so I used the df command, which only shows mounted drives, to determine whether to make sure that my data drive. So remember, I've got 4 terabyte drives on my Nextcloud server, and one of those 4 terabyte drives is my Nextcloud data drive. And so I just run df with no flags, grep q, that's grep quiet, and then this is my mount point. So df, yeah, is just for mounted, just shows mounted drives. ls block lsblk shows everything, whether mounted or not. And then if it is not mounted, that's what the double lines are. It runs both of these commands. So you do curly braces to group it together. And very often, I just put this all in one line. That's why the semicolon is necessary there before the curling, the closing curly brace. And I echo this here, and it's going to let me know. So I have mailutils installed on my Nextcloud server and on my desktop computer actually as well. And then that's going to notify me when I'll log in if something's not mounted. Now, I should install sendmail on my Nextcloud server, but I haven't done that yet. All right. And so that way I could do a sendmail command if it's not mounted, but it's probably mounted. And I log in periodically, it'll let me know. Here are my backup directories. This is my Nextcloud, the web server, var dub. That's Apache. By the way, this is not a Nextcloud snap. It's the regular install of Nextcloud. Here's my data directory. Here's my database directory. Here's my Etsy configuration directory. Let's see. Now, so we've got this section that's the local backup. Yeah, so if the data directory is not mounted, there's nothing to back up from, and that's a problem. So we just need to exit the script right then and there. All right, so here I check, and I'll check, and I need to make sure my backup drive is mounted, my local backup drive. And so for hourly, this is case 1, the first parameter, and you can see that up above with the H flag right there. And so simple rc command with the A flag, and then local delete. This is the one that's run every 2 weeks. Where was that? Every 2 weeks, local delete. That's on the 14th and the 28th. Yes. That's at 2 different times, so it needed to be listed twice on the cron tab. Otherwise, I get notified. The handy sendmail application notifies me. All right, so first I need to check and make sure the backup drive is mounted. I checked that for both the local backup drive and the remote backup drive. Otherwise, it's a mess because it would end up, I guess, if you didn't check it, it could, I think it would have been set up this way where it would end up just filling up the place it would be mounted. So, and that would fill up the drive, and that's not a good thing when that happens. All right, so here I check to make sure the thing's mounted. Get my port, I give my key. Here's my username, IP address, and then SSH, runs this command. And if this has an exit status that is a failure, basically, there we go, the double brackets. We run both of these in a group. And I exit the script because, well, it's not mounted. So we need to stop at that point because there's not going to be enough space in the target directory. I think it's like a 32 gigabyte micro SD card, and that will not hold all that data. All right, so then next, if we did not exit, that thing is mounted. I've got the hourly backup. And then remote delete flags. See that up here? Remote delete every 2 weeks. And then we got the hourly backup. Hit W there. All right, so this is cool. You can use rsync on remote directories in this manner. The A flag, that stands for archive. All right, so we're on the E flag here. Let's look and see what the manual says, the man page for rsync. This option allows you to choose an alternative remote shell program, etc., etc., etc. And so then we've got the SSH information right here. And backup directories. You can see that. Oh, that wasn't very specific. There we go, right there. So we've got the various backup directories that I talked about earlier. And this does not need to be quoted. Otherwise, it'll see it as one block. the remote IP address followed by a colon and the remote directory. And the only difference between these two commands, this one here and this one here, is the delete flag. And this RD flag that's set in my cron job, of course, as I already mentioned, is run once every 2 weeks. All right, I hope this was helpful, and please let me know if you have any follow-up comments or anything. I would be glad. I would definitely be open to them. And one last thing, I also have mailutils installed on my desktop. And so my user on my desktop, I run an hourly job to check on my remote backup directory and make sure it is mounted, because the one that is not mounted sometimes because it's Lux encrypted, and anytime the power goes out at their house, it reboots and it doesn't mount automatically. So I need to do manual intervention there because it's got the Lux encryption. And so it does notify me, mailutils does notify me when I initially log in, but I put this in my bash RC file. So I, install mailutils and I check it. And if there is mail, it'll let me know. So that's run hourly to make sure that the remote drive is mounted and unlocked. So hope you have a nice day, and hope this can be helpful and that you can implement it in some form or fashion. I'd be glad to hear your feedback as well.